Some firearms earn a place in history through innovation, reliability, or sheer grit. Others end up here. This is a list of 15 guns that have crossed the line from disappointing to downright worthless. Not just outdated, not just unpopular worthless in the truest sense. These are models plagued by design failures, manufacturing shortcuts, or reputations so damaged that not even collectors want them. Some were pulled from the market after lawsuits and recalls. Others still gather dust in pawn shops impossible to sell, even at a steep discount. Each entry on this list is backed by real-world problems, safety hazards, catastrophic mechanical flaws, or a legacy of failure too notorious to forget. In 2025, with gun technology and expectations higher than ever, these 15 weapons stand out for all the wrong reasons. If you're in the market for a sidearm, consider this your cautionary tale because these guns aren't just a bad investment, they're a liability. If time travel were real, this revolver would be better off left in 1910. The U.S. Revolver Company's 32 and 38 models were economy-grade handguns in their day, and more than a century later they offer zero functional value in any category. These guns were never intended for long-term use, and their build quality shows it. Most were made with soft metals, brittle springs, and rudimentary lockwork that doesn't hold up after decades of drawer duty. There's no safety, no modern support, and no gunsmith in their right mind will try to service one. Spare parts don't exist unless you're cannibalizing another broken example, and even then you're swapping one problem for another. Some people inherit these thinking they're holding a historical treasure. In reality, they're holding something that's dangerous to fire and impossible to maintain. As a range piece, it's a liability. As a collector's item, it's ignored. And as a self-defense weapon. That would be a tragic misunderstanding of both history and mechanics. This revolver is shaped like a gun, weighs like a gun, and even fires like a gun on the days it's feeling cooperative. The RG23 from RG Industries is infamous, not because it failed quietly, but because it failed publicly. Manufactured with low-cost zinc alloy and bargain basement internals, this six-shooter became a symbol of everything that could go wrong when cost-cutting overrides safety. Its accuracy is laughable, the cylinder timing is often misaligned, and the double action pull feels like dragging a boat anchor through sand. Misfires are common, lockup is unreliable, and reassembly after cleaning, if you dare, is a cruel joke. On top of that, it's been banned or restricted in multiple states due to its notorious reputation among law enforcement and crime analysts. The RG23 wasn't just a budget choice. It was a bad choice, disguised as affordability. Its only real use these days is as a paperweight with attitude, or maybe a reminder that sometimes you really do get what you pay for. At first glance, the TP-22 looks like a promising little pocket pistol, slim profile, clean lines, and a vague resemblance to the Walther PPK. But looks, as they say, can deceive, and this one does it exceptionally well. The TP-22 is plagued with feeding issues, slide problems, firing mechanism that seems more interested in meditation than ignition. Even worse, the platform offers no modern support. Good luck finding replacement parts or a gunsmith who's willing to take one apart, let alone put it back together properly. The gun is picky with ammo, hates being dirty, and occasionally decides it just doesn't want to cycle at all. People buy these hoping to own a vintage oddity. What they get is a malfunction waiting to happen. In a world full of dependable 22s, this one manages to underachieve at every level. You don't own a TP-22, you manage it like a problematic pet you can't quite rehome. Davis Industries came out swinging in the 1980s, offering ultra-low-cost handguns for the masses. Unfortunately, they didn't swing far unless we're talking about court cases. The P380, like many of their models, was assembled with injection-molded parts and questionable alloys that feel closer to cast zinc than anything battle-ready. This gun has one job: go bang, and it often fails at that. From soft strikes and stovepipes to the occasional slide crack, it's a technical nightmare. Davis folded in the late 90s under a mountain of lawsuits related to product safety, and they didn't leave behind a legacy, just a landfill of broken pistols. Try to find one today, and you'll mostly see it at pawn shops sitting lonely and unloved, tagged at $50 and still overpriced. It's not a training tool, it's not safe to carry, and it's definitely not collectible. The P380 is the firearm equivalent of a scratch-off ticket that was already used and lost. Now look, I'm the first to admit High Point gets more hate than it sometimes deserves. Their newer models are ugly but functional, but the early generation CF380, that was a special kind of punishment. This pistol is an ergonomic disaster, with a slide so heavy it feels like it was machined from old tractor parts. Its blowback system produces sharp recoil even in 380, and the trigger has the subtlety of a mousetrap in a thunderstorm. Worst of all, early CF380s are jam-prone, especially when fed anything besides FMJs, and their magazines have a reputation for acting up after minimal use. High-point fans say you get what you pay for, and that's true. With this model, you got a clunky, awkward, barely functional brick. And while it technically fires, the overall experience makes you question your life choices. The resale value is so low, you'd be better off trading it for lunch and a cup of bad coffee. There's a reason Bryco's name keeps popping up in every firearm cautionary tale. The 380 variant was one of their most popular and also one of their most problematic. Built under the shadow of Jennings firearms, this gun came from a line of manufacturers that treated safety as an afterthought and metallurgy as a suggestion. The Bryco 380 is small, snappy, and wildly inconsistent. Users reported everything from stuck slides to broken firing pins, and some models even had a nasty tendency to discharge when dropped. The design is cramped and uncomfortable to grip, and the trigger feels like it's dragging through gravel. The company eventually collapsed under the weight of negligence lawsuits, and today what's left is a legacy of pistols that no one wants to touch, literally or legally. This is not a weapon you carry for defense. It's one you apologize for owning. Even as a curiosity, it brings nothing to the table but regret. The Cobray M11 is a paradox wrapped in steel and nostalgia. It looks menacing like something out of an 80s action flick, and that's exactly what draws people in. But take it to the range and you'll find out real quick that intimidation doesn't equal performance. Chambered in 9mm and styled like a machine pistol, the M11 is heavy, poorly balanced, and notorious for spray and pray accuracy. Its open bolt design was a relic even when it was introduced, and the trigger pull is long, vague, and frustrating. What can you even attach to this thing without a drill press and duct tape? Forget it. Want tight groups at 15 yards? You're dreaming. Reliability is spotty at best. Misfeed stovepipes and jammed magazines are all part of the package. And since it's been banned in several states due to its appearance and misuse in crimes, you're left with a range toy that no one wants to deal with, and that's being generous. The M11 looks cool on a shelf. That's where it should stay. There's no denying that TEC-9 has a certain culture presence. It's been glamorized in movies, rap videos, and crime reports. But fame isn't the same as function, and this pistol proves it. With its bulky frame and open bolt ancestry, the TEC-9 delivers all the subtlety of a fire hose with a stuck nozzle. Functionally, it's a disaster. Accuracy is laughable, especially during rapid fire, which it encourages with its massive magazine capacity and flimsy controls. Heat buildup is quick, and failure to feed is common. The polymer lower frame feels like it was made in a high school shop class, and disassembly is something between a puzzle and a dare. This model's also been banned in multiple states, not because of performance, but because it's been linked to enough criminal activity to earn a permanent side-eye from lawmakers. But don't be fooled by the mystique. The TEC-9 is more of a novelty than a firearm, and not in a good way. It's better known for headlines than any meaningful role at the range or in defense. Credit where it's due, Taurus tried something new. The Curve was designed to mold to the body literally a pistol with a bent frame meant for deep concealment without printing. But what sounds clever in theory turned into a train wreck in practice. First off, the ergonomics are bizarre. The grip is slick and awkward, and the trigger guard is so tightly curved it feels like it was designed for someone with square fingers. The magazine release rear-facing, the integrated light weak, the sights... Oh wait, there aren't any. You aim for this thing by instinct, which is Taurus speak for good luck. Functionally, it wasn't much better. Jams, light strikes, and inconsistent ejection plagued early units. The Curve was discontinued after a short and unimpressive run quietly pushed into the shadows. These days, even hardcore Taurus fans treat it like a design experiment that should have stayed on the drawing board. Sometimes innovation works. Other times you get a pistol shaped like a banana and just as useful under pressure. If you've ever wanted a .22 that gives you the full experience of a malfunction simulator, the Phoenix Arms HP22 and HP25 have you covered. On paper, they look decent, small, affordable, and seemingly practical. But get one in your hand and it's a different story entirely. Let's start with safety. There are two of them, and neither feels intuitive. The magazine disconnect makes reloads awkward. The slide feels like it's riding on gravel, and the trigger breaks like a twig under pressure. Reliability. Only if you keep it surgically clean and feed it high-quality ammo, otherwise expect regular failures to eject or feed. It's the kind of gun you might give to someone you don't particularly like wrapped in a smile. While some people claim theirs runs fine, most know better. This is a range toy with a shelf life. And when it stops working, which it will, you'll realize you've spent more time clearing jams than shooting. A shining beacon of everything wrong with the Saturday Night Special era. Chambered in 25 ACP, this little pistol was cheap, widely distributed, and built with materials just durable enough to survive the ride home from the pawn shop. It features a direct blowback system that kicks harder than it should, a slide that tends to loosen over time, and a safety lever that feels like it was made from recycled coat hangers. The MP25 is notoriously picky with ammo, and even when it cycles properly, accuracy is optimistic at best. This wasn't a carry gun. It was a desperation gun, something people bought because it was all they could afford, not because it worked. Revolver Arms, the company behind it, folded after being buried in lawsuits, and rightly so. Today, if you see an MP25 for sale, it's usually tucked under a glass counter with a $60 price tag and a silent warning, "Just walk away." This one isn't just a bad gun, it's a whole family of bad ideas passed down through corporate reincarnation. Jennings became Bryco, which became Jimenez, which became, well, irrelevant. All three names are tied to the same basic 9mm pistol design, and all three ended up in courtrooms more often than gun ranges. The issues are legendary: magazine problems, cracked slides, misfires, and most notoriously unintentional discharges when dropped. These guns were built from the cheapest materials possible, then rushed into production to capture the budget buyer. What they captured instead was a pile of lawsuits and a reputation so toxic that even pawn shops hesitate. The design itself is cramped and awkward, with a slide that feels like it's been lubricated with gravel and regret. Despite numerous rebrandings, the flaws stayed the same. Jimenez finally filed for bankruptcy in 2020 after more legal trouble and safety concerns. You can still find these for sale online, usually accompanied by disclaimers and apologies. If there's ever been a handgun that embodies "learn from our mistakes," it's this one. Some guns are bad. This one made history for being bad. The Rohm RG10 and RG14 revolvers were cheaply made in West Germany and imported into the US as budget self-defense options, but even by cheap standards, they were barely functional. Made mostly of pot metal with crude machining and laughable tolerances, the RG10 was known for poor timing, low muzzle velocity, and a grip that felt like holding a hollow doorstop. The RG14 is remembered for a more chilling reason. It was the gun used in the attempted assassination of President Ronald Reagan in 1981. That's not exactly a legacy anyone should be proud of. These revolvers are mechanically crude, poorly balanced, and known for spitting lead shavings due to cylinder misalignment. Disassembly is a nightmare, and repair is generally considered a waste of time. Several states have since banned them as junk guns. They weren't designed for longevity, and they certainly never earned respect. History may remember them, but not fondly, and definitely not functionally. Lorcin is the stuff of legal legend in the worst possible way. This company didn't just make bad guns, they made dangerous ones. Their L9mm and L380 pistols were notorious for catastrophic failures, including cracked slides, accidental discharges, and frames that could warp under normal use. The guns were so poorly constructed that even brand new models often had to be manually cycled after each shot. Feed ramps were barely polished. Triggers had unpredictable pull weights, and the magazine release was famous for letting go at exactly the wrong time. One particularly damning report showed an L380 exploding during normal operation. Lorcin's safety standards were so questionable that the company became one of the most sued manufacturers in firearm history. They declared bankruptcy in the late 90s, not due to market conditions, but under the weight of litigation and insurance abandonment. To this day, Lorcin pistols are treated as cautionary tales. If you see one at a gun show, it's likely in a box marked parts only, and even then you'd be hard-pressed to find a use for them. This isn't just the worst modern pistol, it's a modern legend of failure. The USFA Zip 22 was meant to be an innovative modular .22 LR pistol. What we got instead was a jamming, unpredictable, finger-pinching death wish that took down an entire company. It looks like something out of a sci-fi movie, angular, plastic, heavy, and weirdly compact. But once you actually try to fire it, things fall apart, literally. The Zip 22 is notorious for failing to cycle stovepiping on almost every magazine on Meepow, and even ejecting brass directly into the shooter's face. Field stripping it is a mechanical joke, and the controls feel like an afterthought. The idea was noble, a sleek, futuristic pistol that could mount under a rifle as a backup weapon. But the execution? Beyond disastrous. Even forgotten weapons, usually generous to quirky guns, declared it one of the worst designs they'd ever tested. The USFA Zip 22 didn't just fail, it torched the company's reputation and vanished from shelves, leaving behind one of the most infamous modern firearm flops ever produced. Some firearms are flawed. Others are cautionary tales that belong in books titled What Not to Do in Gun Design. The 15 pistols we've looked at today aren't just disappointing, they've earned reputations as liabilities lawsuits and mistakes that keep showing up in pawn shops like bad habits. If you're shopping for a firearm, especially on a tight budget, don't let price blind you. Look for proven reliability parts, support, and a track record backed by users who actually trust the gun with their lives. A cheap pistol that fails when it matters most isn't a bargain. It's a risk you didn't need to take. If you've had experience with any of these or think we missed one that deserves the Hall of Shame, drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear your stories. Tap like if this saved you from making a bad buy and subscribe so you don't miss the next breakdown. More gun talk is coming, some gems, some disasters, and a few glorious weirdos. I'll see you in the next one.